Hi, welcome back to Psalms. Today we're looking at Psalm 18, and for the first time really in this series I've got the challenge of a very long psalm, and I want to keep it a really short video. I just want to see one detail really of how we can read the psalm today, and one detail maybe of application of the psalm today as well. Psalm 18 is a thanksgiving psalm. It's kind of like a reorientation of your heart back to living in light of the truth. David has been delivered. God has done something special in David's experience. You can read about it in the little line at the top of the psalm. Notice the first three verses here. I'm not going to read them out to you for the sake of time, but I just want you to notice some details in the terminology here. So we've got the reference to love. God is called my rock a couple of times. We've got also my deliverer. And what else? We've got my salvation. I'm picking out certain ones here, and also saved from my enemies. Okay, so rock and deliverer, salvation and enemies. That's the kind of launch of the psalm. Now let's drop right to the end. When we come to the end, what do we have? God, my rock, my salvation. What else do we have here? We should have delivered me. What else are we missing? Rock, delivered, salvation, and enemies. They were here a minute ago. There they go. Rescued me from my enemies. We've also got a reference to love at the bottom of that. So the same terminology that is launching the psalm is used again at the end of the psalm. Now, what's interesting here is that the beginning and the end of the psalm function kind of as a wrap-up, but then within the psalm there's the same pattern continues, kind of moving inwards. And so the first half, which is really the next bit from verse 4 down to 19, is really about God rescuing David, all that God has done. Towards the end, from verse 32 down to 45, it's about David being victorious with God's help. You'll notice that as you read it, that to begin with, it's like God's done this, God's done this, God's done this. And then towards the end, David's saying, I did this, but it's all in reference to God. And so you're kind of coming in from the outside towards the center. There's another layer either side of the center point of the psalm, which I won't get into now. You can see if you can trace that for yourself from about verse 20 to 31. And then the centerpiece really is 25 to 29. But even there, right at the center, we get verse 27. For you save a humble people, but the haughty eyes you bring down. So the but there means this is a antithetical, right? So this is going in one direction, second line takes it in the opposite direction. God saves those who are humble, like David. But in contrast, he humbles or brings down the proud. God opposes the proud but gives grace to the humble. Maybe you've heard that verse. This is kind of the same thing backward, right? God saves the humble people, but the haughty eyes you bring down. That really does feel like the center of the entire psalm. So when you read through it, you get this sense all the way through that God is saving a humble people while bringing down the haughty. And you see that on both sides. The first half, look at what God's done. The second half, more look at what God's enabled David to do. So it's a beautiful psalm, 50 verses long. You'll recognize plenty of wording as you go through it. But in terms of application, I just want to keep this really simple. Go right back to the start where David says, I love you, O Lord, my strength. The Lord is my rock and my fortress and my deliverer, my God, my rock, in whom I take refuge. My shield, the horn of my salvation, my stronghold. I call upon the Lord who is worthy to be praised, and I am saved from my enemies. The application, I suppose, of Psalm 18, I've called the video humility. Humility hides. Humility hides itself in God. Since God is so good, and since we want to be humble and respond appropriately to him, hide yourself in God and see what he does. So take a look through Psalm 18, enjoy it. It's a wonderful psalm, and share highlights with others in the comments below and in conversation today. Thanks so much for watching Psalms Today.